Part 1. The first law of stupidity: underestimating reality. Most people you meet are not evil. They're not even consciously malicious. They're simply stupid, not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack self-awareness. That's the kind of stupidity Machiavelli understood best, the kind that disguises itself as morality, empathy, or optimism, yet destroys more than it creates. The stupid person believes the world operates on fairness, emotion, and good intentions. The intelligent man knows the world operates on power, perception, and cause and effect. That is why stupidity spreads, because it flatters human ego. It tells people they are good just for existing, moral for feeling, and righteous for obeying the crowd. The psychology of stupidity is simple. People crave comfort more than truth. They prefer the illusion of control over the discomfort of responsibility. So they outsource their thinking to others, to media, to trends, to leaders who promise them meaning. This is not just ignorance, it's voluntary blindness. Machiavelli warned that most humans, when faced with hard truths, will destroy the truth-teller rather than confront their own foolishness. In The Prince, he hinted that those who speak truth in public must first learn to survive their audience's stupidity, because stupidity, when challenged, becomes aggressive. A fool doesn't protect his ignorance protects him from reality. That's why you can't fix stupid people. You can only limit their power to drag you down with them. The Machiavellian mind doesn't try to educate the mob, it learns how to outthink it. Because the mob doesn't want to understand, it wants to belong. Look around. People share opinions they don't understand, defend values they don't live by, and follow leaders they don't trust. That's not intelligence. That's mental submission, the surrender of independent thought for the illusion of virtue. If you've ever tried to warn someone, only to be mocked for it, you've met stupidity in its purest form, arrogance without competence. It's the fool who thinks knowing a few quotes makes him wise. It's the crowd that believes repeating a slogan makes them moral. And it's the modern tragedy that stupidity has become fashionable, wrapped in the language of compassion and equality. Here's a simple Machiavellian law: never argue with the stupid, observe them, predict them, and stay 3 moves ahead. You win not by changing their mind, but by shaping their environment so their stupidity collapses under its own weight. If you've seen this truth play out, the blind leading the blind, comment below, I see the pattern. Because once you start to see it, you can't unsee it. The wise observe, the stupid react. And in a world of reaction, calm understanding is the sharpest weapon. Part 2. The second law: stupidity is contagious. Machiavelli once wrote that a ruler should never trust the crowd's judgment, only its patterns. He understood that stupidity doesn't just live in individuals, it spreads, mutates, and infects entire systems. Modern stupidity works like a virus. It doesn't need intelligence to survive, it only needs emotion. Anger spreads faster than thought. Outrage feels better than reason. So stupidity thrives, because it's easier to feel than to think. Scroll through any social media feed, and you'll see this in action. People repost what confirms their feelings, not what challenges them. They mistake emotional validation for truth, and they proudly defend it as their opinion. But Machiavelli would say, opinions don't matter. Outcomes do. A stupid man can feel righteous while destroying his own stability. A smart man can look cruel while protecting his future. And that's the paradox of the modern world. Stupidity feels moral. Intelligence looks cold. This is why true intelligence feels lonely. Because once you stop chasing agreement, you begin to see how most people build their lives on illusions they can't afford to lose. You can't save them, because saving them would mean showing them how weak their beliefs really are. That's why Machiavellian strategy always begins with detachment. You don't absorb the crowd's emotion, you study it. You don't follow the noise, you analyze what the noise reveals. In psychological terms, this detachment is power, because the man who controls his reactions controls his reality. And that's the difference between being smart and being wise. The wise man knows when not to speak, when not to correct, when not to engage. He doesn't fight stupidity, he redirects it. Look at every great manipulator, leader, or strategist in history. They didn't lecture people into wisdom. They weaponized stupidity. They turned the crowd's irrationality into predictable behavior. Because the fool always acts out of emotion, and emotion always leaves tracks. Here's your takeaway. Stupidity is contagious, but so is composure. The more detached you become, the more others expose themselves. The less you react, the more you see who's trapped by their own emotions. If you understand this, type, "I refuse infection" in the comments. Because refusing emotional infection is the first act of rebellion against collective stupidity. Machiavelli's world was brutal, but he understood something eternal. Human nature doesn't evolve. Only the technology around it does. And as long as people seek comfort more than clarity, stupidity will rule the masses. But it doesn't have to rule you. Part 3. The comfort of the crowd. People are not stupid because they lack intelligence. They're stupid because they fear standing alone. Machiavelli understood that humans are herd animals disguised as individuals. They will follow the loudest voice, not the smartest one. They will kneel to the illusion of certainty, even when it leads them directly into ruin. You've seen it yourself. People copy opinions like fashion trends. They parrot the same slogans, defend the same lies, and call it thinking. They don't want truth, they want belonging. And that desire to belong is the most exploitable weakness in the world. Crowds don't form because people share ideas. Crowds form because people share fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being isolated. The Machiavellian sees this and smiles. Because the herd can always be controlled by whoever dares to think independently. The individual who resists conformity becomes dangerous, not because they fight the system, but because they see through it. Look through history. Every great manipulator understood the crowd psychology. They knew that logic doesn't move the masses, emotion does. The crowd wants a story, not a strategy. They want to be told they're on the right side, not that they're being used. And that's why the majority will always serve the few who understand this dynamic. The wise never argue with the crowd. They direct it. They give people symbols to worship, enemies to hate, and slogans to repeat. Once you control what people feel, you never need to control what they think. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The modern world rewards herd behavior. Social media thrives on outrage, envy, and imitation. The algorithm doesn't amplify intelligence, it amplifies conformity. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. So if you want to escape this cycle, start small. Question the opinions that make you comfortable. Doubt the ones that feel universally accepted. The moment you realize that most truths are just popular opinions wearing moral masks, you step outside the herd. And once you're outside, you start to see how fragile it all really is. The herd survives on ignorance, but individuals rise through awareness. And if you agree, say it in the comments. I choose awareness over approval. Because the first act of power is refusing to be another echo in the noise. Part 4. The illusion of equality. Humanity loves to preach equality, but in practice, it despises it. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. People say they want fairness, but what they truly crave is advantage, preferably hidden beneath moral language. Everyone wants to be equal until equality threatens their comfort. The lie of modern civilization is that all opinions, all people, all outcomes are the same. But they're not. Some people work harder, think deeper, and act faster. Others cling to victimhood like armor, believing their suffering gives them wisdom. But pity doesn't create strength, it destroys it. The Machiavellian doesn't waste energy pretending the world is fair. They accept hierarchy as natural law. In every system, business, politics, even relationships, there are predators and prey. To deny this is to stay prey forever. And yet, people hate this truth. They want fairness to mean sameness. They want life to reward them just for existing. They mistake equality of opportunity for equality of outcome. And when reality refuses to cooperate, they turn bitter. They attack the successful, envy the capable, and demand the world lower its standards to match their mediocrity. But here's the truth Machiavelli would whisper. If you want to rise above others, you must first accept that not everyone will rise with you. You can't lead if you fear standing above. You can't win if you pity every loser. And you can't grow if you believe the system owes you anything. The powerful create advantage. Part 5. The ego that blinds the wise. The most dangerous kind of stupidity isn't ignorance, it's arrogance. Because when someone thinks they know everything, they stop seeing anything. Machiavelli understood this flaw perfectly. The greatest fools often wear the mask of wisdom. They cling to their opinions like armor, mistaking stubbornness for strength. They preach intelligence, but refuse correction. They call it confidence, but it's ego. And ego is the silent killer of clarity. Look around you. How many people argue, not to understand, but to win? How many defend false beliefs just because they said them aloud once? The ego doesn't seek truth, it seeks validation. And that craving turns even the brightest minds into slaves of their own pride. The Machiavellian sees the world differently. He knows that intelligence means adaptation, not arrogance. It's the ability to pivot, to admit when you're wrong, and to evolve faster than those too proud to learn. The truly wise don't shout their knowledge, they refine it. They don't demand agreement, they command respect through precision. But society rewards the loud, not the wise. We live in an age where everyone's an expert, everyone's a philosopher, everyone's right. The internet gave every fool a microphone and taught them to mistake attention for intelligence. And when everyone's shouting, no one's thinking. That's how civilizations fall, not through violence, but through noise. When truth becomes subjective and feelings replace facts, stupidity spreads like infection. The ego of the collective blinds the entire culture. The Machiavellian doesn't try to cure it. He uses it. Because nothing is easier to control than a person convinced they can't be controlled. Nothing is easier to deceive than someone who thinks they're too smart to be deceived. So if you want to rise above the age of arrogance, you must detach from the need to always be right. You must let go of defending your identity at the cost of your evolution. Power belongs to the flexible, not the fragile. The moment you stop learning, you stop leading. And the moment you stop leading, you start following. Machiavelli once said that fortune favors the bold, but he could have added this: fortune abandons the proud. If you understand this, write it in the comments. Ego blinds. Awareness conquers. Because the first act of mastery is learning to outthink your own pride. Part 6. The wisdom of strategic selfishness. People like to believe that goodness saves the world. But Machiavelli would say, goodness ruins it. Because goodness without power is just submission in disguise. And helping everyone without judgment only feeds stupidity. You see this everywhere. The kind-hearted give endlessly until they're hollow, believing their sacrifice will inspire change. But it doesn't. It breeds dependence. The world punishes those who give too much. Part 7. The liberation of ruthless clarity. The final truth is this: most people don't want intelligence. They want comfort dressed as wisdom. They crave reassurance that their emotions are truth, that their goodness guarantees reward, that their chaos is meaningful. But the Machiavellian mind knows the world doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to your control. Human stupidity isn't about lack of knowledge. It's the refusal to see the world as it is. We lie to ourselves because truth burns. It demands responsibility. It shatters the illusion that life is fair, that people are kind, that morality guarantees safety. And so, people choose blindness. They wrap themselves in optimism, obedience, and fake virtue. They call it compassion. They call it faith. But it's fear, the fear of seeing things clearly. Machiavelli wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers, and that a ruler must act not as the world should be, but as it is. That line wasn't cynicism, it was freedom. Because once you stop expecting goodness from others, you stop being manipulated by it. You stop waiting for fairness and start mastering outcomes. True clarity feels cold at first. It strips away the illusions that keep weak men warm. But once your eyes adjust to the dark, you see the pattern. You see how stupidity hides behind morality, how weakness disguises itself as empathy, how the world rewards control disguised as kindness. And in that moment, you stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop chasing validation. You become calm, dangerously calm. Because when you see stupidity for what it is, not evil, but inertia, you no longer try to fight it. You navigate it. You use it. You bend it to your will without needing to destroy it. That's what separates the Machiavellian mind from the naive. The fool tries to fix the world, the wise adapt to it. So you move differently. You speak less, observe more, and give nothing for free. Not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your allegiance. You become the person no one can predict because your motives aren't moral, they're strategic. You help when it serves the plan. You withhold when it doesn't. And suddenly, you find peace, not through harmony, but through hierarchy. You rise above the chaos because you understand it. This is the ultimate escape from human stupidity, detachment. You detach from the need to fix others. You detach from the noise of opinions. You detach from the fantasy that virtue equals victory. And once you detach, you see the world with frightening clarity. You realize that being selfish isn't sin, it's self-respect. That power isn't cruelty, it's protection. That control isn't corruption, it's alignment with reality. Every empire that fell believed its morality would protect it. Every man who was betrayed believed his loyalty would be returned. Every fool who was broken believed their goodness would be enough. History doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards discipline, self-interest, and the ability to remain unmoved when others beg for reaction. You can be moral without being naive. You can be kind without being used. But to do that, you must become sovereign over your own instincts, your emotions, your generosity, your desire to be understood. Because the greatest power of all is to understand everything and still stay silent. So as this series ends, remember this. You do not owe the world your innocence. You owe it your mastery. And if you truly wish to protect others, protect yourself.